Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Hydrated History. Today, we're going to be looking at a very important character that is near and dear to European history, Napoleon. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking.
Hey, didn't this guy kill millions of people in his wars?
Well, yes, he did. But it should be noted that he's still very important. And this is for a grade. So, let's get started. Part 1: The Rise. Well, not like a big rise. He wasn't very tall, so it wasn't like he was rising up super high. Napoleon was a general in the French army during the French Revolution and was considered a hero for some of his successful battles in Austria. People were like,
Yo, this dude's pretty sick.
little did they know. Either way, after he was sent to Egypt, he planned and executed a coup, which was spectacularly successful, if I might say so myself. And afterwards, he established himself as the ruler of France, naming himself the Emperor. Now, one might ask oneself,
Why'd the French people let him do that?
yes. Well, to be honest, it was because he was adding a level of security that the people of France really hadn't had in a long time. Also, in the beginning, he was making some good changes to French society. He enacted liberal policies and reforms that were favorable in the eyes of the people, like his careers open to talent reforms, which allowed people to have jobs because of their skill rather than their lineage. 4 grades of school were also set up: primary, secondary, lycees, and technical schools. He also created a centralized bureaucracy. And he signed the Concordat of 1801, which relieved a lot of the religious stress that was on France at the time. After he had established himself, though, Napoleon became more and more controlling of his country, and he really started to do things that were not very popular. He began to curtail women's rights all over the country because he just didn't see them as equals. He also established a civil code which addressed mainly matters relating to property and families, made the authority of men over their families stronger, deprived women of any individual rights, and reduced the rights of illegitimate children. And now, while that seems sexist, I'm just kidding, that is very, very sexist. And people began to notice too. They were saying things like,
Okay, well, that wasn't great, but still better than the Reign of Terror, right?
well, Napoleon didn't like all that backtalk, so he decided to censor a lot of what people were saying. He controlled the news, so he didn't let anyone say anything bad about him. How did anyone enforce this, you might ask? Well, he established a secret police that was led by this guy named Fouché, and sent a bunch of spies throughout France to catch anyone crap-talking Napoleon. So basically, people would snitch on each other, which caused a bunch of untrusting people, and fear, which also helped Napoleon keep his power for like ever and ever. Or at least that's what he thought. Part 2: The Ruin. Eventually, in his thirst for power, Napoleon began to wage a series of wars against seemingly everyone in Europe. He fought against Austria, Spain, Britain, Russia, and a few others. Thing was, though, was that they were all formidable enemies, and so while Napoleon was successful in gaining some land and territory, he was relatively resisted by the rest of Europe. This is shown more in Spain and Russia than anywhere else. For Spain, Napoleon used guerrilla warfare tactics to try and forcefully take land in Spain and conquer it. But this battle lasted a lot longer than he had planned, and it finally ended when the Sixth Coalition had defeated him in 1814. In Russia, he had it even worse. Everybody had been telling him, hey, we don't think that you should take your troops into Russia. He was like, why? They were like, it's super cold, dude. But for some reason, he was like, nah, I got this. Watch. And led a siege into Russia. And once you know it, Russia is really freaking cold. Plus, they were kind of balling out in this war. Instead of giving up their land, they decided to burn it all, just so that the French couldn't use it. That is the level of petty that I aspire to be when I grow up. It is a tactic called the scorched earth policy, aptly named. After his defeat, people began to really be like,
Yeah, this guy is terrible.
they eventually forced Napoleon into a retreat, and this was kind of essentially the end to Napoleon's first rule.
First rule? Did I hear that right?
Yes, you did, kind citizen. After his defeat, he was banished to the island of Elba, where he recuperated and came back.
Guess who's back? Back again.
He decided to take over France again, but this reign was very shortly lived. Britain and Prussia pretty much just pimp-slapped him into giving up, and he was banished again to the island of St. Helena, where he eventually died. Rest in peace. Part 3: The Response. After Napoleon's reign, many people across Europe responded specifically to the situation that he caused. Students in Germany even began to form groups to protest against tyrannical rulers like Napoleon. Ideas of nationalism began to spread too, as people began to have more pride in their country. Napoleon also spread a lot of Enlightenment ideals across Europe, like life, liberty, and happiness, if you can believe it. He also spread the idea of liberalism and free thinking. And these ideas began to grow after his rule too. Also, a bunch of nations got together to hash out like what the heck just happened in the Congress of Vienna, aka the Concert of Europe. In it, they decided to establish the Congress system where they can meet and talk about their grievances instead of just pulling an old Napoleon and going ham on the rest of Europe. Now, as I'm guessing, you probably figured out this didn't really work too well after a while, but it still did work for a very long time. Alright guys, that was Napoleon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.